Iain from RTO here. Welcome to a Marathon Wednesday. We've already done a show today. We've done Joe's top 10 for the day he's born. Hope he enjoys it. Hope you guys enjoy the fun we have with that one. So this is two shows on a Wednesday. That doesn't happen very often. So today, this is sort of a viewer's request, and I did say that I'd be ranking this band after I'd listened to their new album to fit it in, and the band we're talking about are Journey. Good band. What I say is probably one of the best arena rock bands in the world. They really know how to put a show on, and that sound. Now, Journey, of course, was formed in 1973 by former members of Santana and the Steve Miller Band and Frimius Bandsnatch. Neil Schon, of course, the main person. Their biggest commercial success, though, was between 78 and 87. Now, according to the Record Industry Association of America, Journey have sold 48 million albums in the US, making them the 25th best-selling band. The worldwide sales have reached over 100 million records. So they have been going a long time, and I do like them a lot, and they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2017, which they should have been done earlier, really, because they deserve to go in. So they've had all sorts of lineups, so I'm just going to go through the lineups for each album, I think. So we've got 15 albums, including the latest one. So coming in at number 15, we have the 9th album that was released in 1986, Raised on Radio, which is the first album that didn't feature founding bassist Ross Verloy, who was replaced by session bassist Randy Jackson and Bob Glaub, and drummer Steve Smith contributed on a few tracks, but was subsequently replaced by Laurie London and Mike Bard. So the band at the time was Steve Perry on lead vocals, Jonathan Cain on the keyboards, Neil Schon on the guitars, Steve Smith did some drumming, as I said, Randy Jackson did some bass, so did Rob Glaub. Drums, Larry London and Mike Bard. Percussion, Steve Minkins and Danny Hull on the saxophone. First track on this one, Girl Can't Help It. Very typical sort of 80s rock track. Nothing wrong with it, because I think Journey were the band that really did know how to make that 80s sound even better. It's quite a good track. Positive Touch, just a standard mid-1980s American rock track. It's not that memorable, I'm afraid. Suzanne, a little bit too funky for me. Not my sort of thing. Be Good to Yourself. Unfortunately, it's one of them other non-memorable tracks. It's just standard 80s rock. Nothing. It's a little bit repetitive. Once You Love Someone, another track that I'm not very keen on. Happy to Give. What spoils this is that horrible 80s keyboard sound. I never liked some of the sounds of the keyboards from the 80s. So that's what really puts me off it. Then we got my favourite track on this one, and it's the title track, Raised on Radio. I love the harmonica start at this. This is best track on here. It's got a track with a bit of guts as well. I'll Be Alright Without You, overproduced. Takes away the sound of Journey. It Could Have Been You, it's alright, nothing special. The Eyes of a Woman, another sort of non-memorable track. Why Can't the Night Go On Forever, wishy-washy ballad for me, but it has got a really good solo from Neil Schon. I don't think this is a very memorable album for me, apart from the title track. It's one of the albums I very rarely put on in matter of fact. So you can say this album didn't have much of an impression on me. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 4 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 14, we have the 10th album released in 1996, and it was the album that marked the reunion of the classic 1980s lineup that they hadn't performed together since 1983. So we have got Steve Perry on the lead vocals, Neil Schon on the rhythm and lead guitars, Jonathan Cain on the keyboards, Ross Villeroy on the bass, and Steve Smith on percussion. First track on here is called Message of Love. It's not a bad track, great vocal from Steve Perry, still hadn't lost it, excellent track. One more. I love this track, it's one of my favourite sort of later Journey tracks. Great guitar solo from Neil and a great vocal from Steve on that one. When You're a Woman, When You Love a Woman, it's okay, it's nothing special, it's just a solid track. If He Should Break Your Heart, I think Steve's vocal performance on this is pretty good, but the rest of the track is a little bit lacklustre. Forever in Blue, I love the guitar at the beginning from Neil Schon. It's got a great bass line from Ross, really strong stuff, not a bad track. Castles Burning, again, the only thing I really like about this is the vocal delivery from Steve Perry and Neil Schon's guitar solo. Don't Be Down on Me Baby, nice ballad I suppose, there's quite a lot of ballads on this album. She Still Cries, another ballad, is quite nice, I like that one. Colour of Spirit, oh, it's just one of the tracks that sort of sounds like the rest of the tracks. It's not got its own identity. When I Think of You, yet another ballady track. It's alright. Easy to Fall. The only thing I like about this is the guitar solo. Can't Tame the Lion. One of the more upbeat tracks. I do like that one. That's pretty good. It's just The Rain. It's just a dull, boring ballad. It's just, there's nothing that holds me to that. Trial by Fire. It is just sometimes hard to define each of these ballads because they all sound the same. Then we get this hidden track. It's called Baby I'm a Leaving You. It's a bit of a reggae thing. Great vocal from Steve. This should have been a great album, you know, return of the classic lineup, but it really didn't do it for me. It was a bit of a disappointment. There are some positives though. Steve Perry did sound really good, and of course Neil Schon's guitar work is still pretty cool. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 5 out of 10. Okay, then coming in at number 13, we have got the 12th album, Generations, and as usual I forget to put the year up, so there it is. And it was the last album with singer Steve Augeri. I did see them with Steve Augeri, I think that's how you pronounce it, and it was the second album with Dean Castronovo. So we've got Steve Augeri on the lead vocals, Neil Schon on the guitars, Jonathan Cain on keyboards, Ross Villeroy on the bass, and Dean Castronovo on the drums. First track on here is Faith in the Heartland. I love the start of this. Some really good keyboard work from Jonathan Cain. It builds up and builds up. It's a good track. I like this track. Solid track. The Place in Your Heart, another really good track. Some good guitar work on here. The bass line from Ross is great, and a great vocal from Steve. Really good song. A Better Life, solid track. Some nice guitar work from Neil on that one as ever. Every Generation, sort of one of these mid-pace rockers. It's alright. Butterfly, She Flies Alone. I don't mind this. It's alright. Got a nice guitar solo. Believe, interesting track this is. It's got a good riff and a really good keyboard line from Jonathan. Not bad at all. Knowing That You Love Me. It's a sort of slow bluesy song. Great vocal from Steve. Like that one a lot. Then we get Out of Harm's Way. One of my favourite tracks on this album. It's got a really strong riff from Neil, and you've got a nice drum piece here from Dean. Excellent. In Self Defense, another good little rocker. Neil shows his guitar work is still as good as ever. Some great drumming on this. Then we get my favourite track on the album, Better Together. Nice vocal from Steve, one of his best ones he did with Journey. Gone Crazy, another absolute great track for drumming. Really solid drumming on that one. Enjoy that one. Beyond the Clouds, it's okay. It's not one of my favourite tracks, but I do like Neil's guitar work on that. Never Too Late, it's okay, but it's just a bit mediocre. Okay, nothing wrong with this album. It's got some strong rockers. I don't mind this album at all. So I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 6.5. Okay, then coming in at number 12, we go to the 13th album. And it was released in 2008, and it's Revelation. And it was the first with their new singer, Arnel Pindina. And it featured some old songs and some new songs. Arnel Pindina was in a... I do believe that he was in a Philippine tribute band to Journey. So the first track is Never Walk Away. This just sounds like classic Journey to me. I think Arnel's vocal is so much like Steve Perry's, and I think that's why I enjoy this form of Journey. Like a Sun Shower, it's not too bad. Great vocal from Arnel. Change for the Better, really good rocker here, racker. Good guitar work from Neil, some great keyboard work from Jonathan Cain, and a really good track. Wildest Dream, my favourite track on here. Got great vocal and a great solo. It's got one of the best solos from Neil Schon. Faith in the Heartland, which was obviously off Generations. All I can say is I prefer this version to the Steve Augeri version. I think Arnel sings it a lot better. After all these years, it's alright. It's a ballad. Where Did You Lose Your Love? I'm not my cup of tea, I'm afraid. It's a little bit wishy-washy. What I Needed, good track, great guitar solo from Neil on that one. Then we got What It Takes to Win, solid track, great vocal from Arnel, like that one. Turn Down the World, it's alright. I wouldn't go overboard on that one, but I do like the solo. Then The Journey, the Revelation, it's a instrumental. Some amazing guitar work from Neil on this, and it's still a bit of a showboat for Jonathan and Neil. It's really good. Now on this you get disc 2, all re-recordings with Arnel doing the vocal, so you get Only the Young, which is from the Quest soundtrack. It's a pretty good version of it. Don't Stop Believing, they do a good version. Wheel of the Sky Faithfully, Any Way You Want It, Who's Crying Now, Separate Ways, Lights, Open Arms, Be Good to Yourself, Stone in Love. This is a very good strong album for Arnel's debut. And the second disc with all the sort of greatest hits, he does a fantastic job. I mean, I think he sings these classics really well. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 6.8. Okay, then coming in at number 11, we have the 11th album, released in 2001. I think it's called Arrival. It's the first album with Steve Augeri, and the first proper album with Dean Castronova, who replaced Steve Smith. So it's Steve Augeri, Neil Schon, Jonathan Cain, Ross Valoy and Dean Castronovo. First track on this one is called Higher Place. A really good track. Great guitar work as ever from Neil. Some good drumming from Dean. All the way, it's a little bit too wishy-washy for me. It's just one of them ballads that you just don't want to listen to. Signs of Life, I don't mind this one. Solid track. Actually wrote by Neil Schon, Jonathan Cain and Elizabeth Cain. It's a real good track. All the Things, love this one. Love that bass line from Ross. Classic Ross bass line there. Again, Neil's guitar work as strong as ever. Love by You, another ballad. I'm not particularly fond of it, but the solo is pretty good. Living to Do, another ballad. Not for me. World Gone Wild, solid rock track from Journey, like that one. I Got a Reason. Again, we've got a great bass line from Ross. Good guitar work and a really good vocal from Steve on that as well. Like that one. Without Love, another ballad. It's Alright. Lifetime of Dreams, another ballad. And the last track, hang on, we've got another Kiss Me Softly, another of those ballads, which is there's too many on this. We'll Meet Again, It's Alright. Another album though, it's got far too many ballads on it. Take them off and you have a even better album. I just think there's just too many ballads on this one, but I can still give it an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. So we got to the top 10, and rounding out the top 10 is actually that 15th and most current album, Freedom, which, remember the Raised on Radio album? This is the title they wanted to use, but Steve Perry preferred the Raised on Radio, so they've actually used the name. And this came out on the 8th of July this year, and we've actually already reviewed it, so this is where it fits into the old catalogue. It comes in at number 10. So performing on here are Neil Schon on guitars, Jonathan Cain on keyboards, Arnel Pindia on lead vocals, new drummer Narada Michael Walden, Randy Jackson on bass, Jason DeCarter on keyboards, and Dean Castronova does play drums and lead vocals on Afterglow. So the first track on here is called Together We Run. This track starts with that familiar piano sound from Journey and Jonathan. Really good track. Pinder's vocals are super on this, and it's a good track. Don't Give Up On Us, another good track. Nice keyboard runs, and when you hear the singing you think it's Steve Perry, and you know it isn't. It's that good. It's a really strong track. Really like that one now. Still Believe in Love, it's okay. It's great vocal. That's all I'll say on that one. You Got the Best of Me, some really nice riffs. Bit of 80s keyboard at the beginning. I don't think they were going back to the nostalgia. It's a good track actually. Live to Love Again, typical OAR ballad, but a great solo from Neil. The Way It Used to Be, this is my favourite track, and it's, I think from the minute I first heard it I loved it. It's still my favourite. It's got some great guitar work from Neil on this. It's probably his best in years. It's a really good track. Come Away With Me. It's a solid track. It's a great rocker. I really like this one. And now, Afterglow. This is the one with Dean singing on it, the former drummer. It's a really good track. I didn't like it to start with, but the more I've listened to it, the more that I've come to appreciate it, and I do like it now. Let It Rain. This is a classic to me now. It's got that classic feel to it. It's got some great guitar work from Neil Schon, and Arnell's vocals on this are superb. I really like that track now. Holding On. Another Arnell vocal that's amazing. Great drumming here. It's a solid track. Love that track. Don't Go. It's probably the weakest track, one of the weakest tracks. Bit of a filler, I'm afraid. I'm not very keen on it. United We Stand. Again, when I reviewed this, I said this was a bit of a filler, and it still remains a bit of a filler. Life Rolls On. Now I've listened to it a few times. I said that originally it was a bit of a basic rocker, but it's got some really intricate stuff on there. Then Beautiful As You Are. I've gradually got to like that one. I think it's one of the better ballads on it. If you remember, I said this isn't a classic Journey album. I said it was good. Now I've listened to it a lot more. I think it's a really strong album. Definitely Arnell's best album. He's really settled into this band now, and he is really singing brilliant on this. And he's rightly deserved to be in the top 10, I think. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Time for a sip of coffee. Rocky's just stirred, so good morning, Rocky. Right, coming in at number 9 then, we have the 14th album released in 2011 called Eclipse, and it's the second album for Arnell. So on here we have got Arnell Pindia, Neil Schon, Jonathan Cain, Voss Villeroy and D Castronovo. First track on this one, City of Hope, a really good track. The drums on this are fantastic. I do like Arnell's vocal on that. Strong track. Edge of the Moment, solid drums this again. Great bass line from Ross as ever. Superb track. Chain of Love. Jonathan's piano at the beginning of this is just classic Journey sound. You listen to that piano, you know it's Jonathan Cain, you know it's Journey. That, you know, very signature sound. Very, very good track. Tantra, love this track. Great vocal from Arnell. He's definitely my second favourite singer in this band. It's terrific. Great stuff. Resonate, my favourite track on here. Reminds me so much of Arena as well, because it's got that lovely keyboards from Jonathan Cain and Neil Schon's guitar work. This sort of goes back to the very early days of Journey here. It's really, really good. Then we get She's a Mystery. Love this track. I love the gentleness of this. Really good. And then you get some real heavy riffs and a guitar solo. Great effects on the solo. Excellent track. Human Feel. Love Dean's drumming on this. Drives the song along. Another strong vocal from Arnell. Ritual, solid rock track, a great track. Great bass line, some great guitars as well. To Whom It May Concern. One of the weaker tracks on the album, but it has got a very good solo. Someone, a bit wishy-washy for me. Venus, It's an instrumental. Some great drumming from Dean on this. Neil's guitar work is just phenomenal as ever. I think this is my favourite post-Steve Perry Journey album. It's really, really good. I know Arnell is a very, very good singer. With Freedom, he's got so much better. Very good. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.1. Okay, then coming at number 8, we have the 8th album, released in 1983. And it was the last time we'd have Valeroy until Trial by Fire. So this is sort of the last of the classic sort of era, really. We got Steve Perry on lead vocals, Neil Schon on the guitars, Jonathan Cain on the keyboards, Ross Valeroy on bass, and Steve Smith on the drums. Separate Ways, classic. Always been one of my favourite Journey tracks. I love that keyboard opening from Jonathan Cain. Some great riffs and the superb Steve Perry on the vocals. Send Her My Love, another steady track. Great stuff. Chain Reaction. Although it's got that real 80s feel to it, I think the drumming from Steve on this, is Steve Smith that is fantastic. Great track. He really knew how to get the best out of the production of 80s drums. After the Fall, it's not a particular favourite of mine. It's just a personal thing, I think. I know a lot of people like that one. Faithfully, loved Jonathan's keyboard. Steve Perry is brilliant. It's just them two having a bit of a thing. It's really good. Then we get Edge of the Blade. The guitar work at the beginning of this from Neil is terrific. Steve Smith's drumming is fantastic as ever. You got that lovely underneath. You got that little bits of strong keyboard from Jonathan. Solid track. Trouble Child. Very 80s rock. But that is, as I said, one thing about Journey. They really knew how to work this production. And I like that track a lot. Back Talk. Another great track here. Revolving round Steve Smith's drums, stonking riffs from Neil, and Steve Perry as ever is on fire. Frontiers, very good track. Some interesting drumming again from Steve Smith, some of his best drumming with the bands on this album. Rubicon, great riffs, stonking drumming from Steve. What I like about this band, the biggest hits in the 80s years, they took full advantage of the sound. It's one of the bands I don't mind 80s albums because they just really knocked it out the park. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.3. Okay then, coming in at number 7, we go back to where it all began for them. The self-titled debut Journey from 1975. This is more of a jazzy progressive rock album, which actually focused on their sort of instrumental work, and it's the only album that included rhythm guitarist George Tinkner. So this is the original lineup. On lead vocals we've got Greg Rowley, Neil Schon on guitars, George Tinkner on guitar, Ross Valeroy on a bass, and the fantastic Ainsley Dunbar on the drums. One of my favourite drummers. He's appeared with everybody. First track here is called One of a Lifetime. It's a typical mid-1970s rock track. Lovely keyboards here from Greg. Neil Schon, a great guitar player, really good stuff, and Ainsley's drumming, solid, sweet drums from Ainsley. In the Morning Day changes tempo a lot in this. It's very jazzy in places, which is what they were when they started. The drumming on here from Ainsley is top draw. Fantastic track. Now we've got an instrumental here, and it's an hard one to pronounce. I think it's Kohutek. That's what I'm going to say. It's that jazz Prog Fusion. Again, we've got some lovely guitar work from Neil. Sort of thing he used to do with Santana. We've got Ainsley Dunbar. Great little drum licks. Keyboards are amazing from Greg. Absolute belter of a track. Then we get to play some music. The keyboard at the beginning of this is brilliant from Greg. I do like it. Then my favourite track is an instrumental called Topaz. This is a great piece of jazz prog fusion. You know, sometimes I say about jazz is all about all these instruments doing all different things but not sounding particularly good. This does. Although they're all sort of playing different sort of things, it all came together on this. The drumming is fantastic, and Neil Sean's guitar work is just like how he played in Santana. It's a brilliant track. Really like that one. Then we get In My Lonely Feeling Conversations. This has really got the Santana feel to it, and I really like that track as well. And the last track is Mystery Mountain. Proper 70s rock track. This is a really good album. It's always forgotten about, but it's a fantastic album. It's a great jazz fusion album, one of the best of the, I think. And I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.4. Okay then, coming at number 6. We're flying through these. We got the fourth album. It was released in 1978, Infinity. It was the first album, of course, that featured Steve Perry, and it was Ainsley Dunbar's last. So we've got Steve Perry on the vocals, Neil Sean on guitars, Greg Raleigh on the keyboards, Ross Valeroy on the bass, Ainsley Dunbar on the drums. Opens up with Lights. Very good track. A great one for Steve to start with. It's a sort of a ballad with some nice hooks. Great vocal from Steve, and Ross's great bass line. Feeling the Way. Love this song. I love it that Greg and Steve sing together on this, and they really did sound great together. Love that track. Anytime. Now this is the first time I think you got that distinctive harmonies of some of the Journey songs, and again it's a really good vocal between Steve and Greg. Two fine singers. Then we get La Dooda. I just love the guitar in this from Neil. Great little track. Patiently. It's alright. It's a bit of a pop track for me. It's okay. Then we get the classic Wheel in the Sky. One of my favourite tracks. I think this is the track that Steve Perry really announced himself in the band. It's a terrific track, always will be. It's great live. I mean, I know I've not seen it with Steve Perry singing it, but it's always great live. I really enjoy that one. Something to Hide. Not one of my favourites, but it's reasonably pleasant. Winds of March, another of my favourites off this album. It's another classic track from the band. One of my favourite vocals from Steve Perry. And I love the drums on this from Ainsley, really strong. Can Do, great rocker. Great vocal from Steve Perry, really strong. Open the Door. It's alright. That's all I'll say about that one. First album for Steve Perry. You can see the shift in direction towards the more rock and jazz. I love this album though. It's got some great tracks on it. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay then, coming at number 5. We've got the second album released in 1976. Look to the Future. So we've got Greg Raleigh on this, Neil Sean, Ross Valeroy and Ainsley Dunbar. First track, On a Saturday Night. Great little track. Oh, nice little rocker here. Some great guitars from Neil. Great vocal from Greg. Really strong vocal. Love that track. It's All Too Much, a really good cover of the George Harrison song, of course. Really good version, I don't mind that. Anyway, another solid track. Great vocals from Greg. Good drum beat here from Ainsley. Then we get my favourite track on the album, She Makes Me Feel Alright. It's a great little rock track. Again, superb vocal from Greg, one of his finest. Then we get You're On Your Own. What I love about this is that Wurlitzer piano. It's very similar to Supertramp sort of start. Very solid track. Neil's guitar work is fantastic on that. Then we get the title track, which is written by Diane Valeroy, Greg Raleigh and Neil Schon. So the partners or brothers or families always get involved with some of these songs. It's very proggy. Love the keyboard from Greg on this, and to compliment that, you've got some great guitar work from Neil. Superb track. Midnight Dreamer. Now this is a real weird fusion. It's more jazz disco. It's all right. Not particularly a favourite of mine. Then we got I'm Gonna Leave You. I love this for one thing. It's called a Hammond organ. That deep, polished sound of a Hammond organ, absolutely brilliant. Some great drumming there from Ainsley. I think this is a very underrated album and forgotten about. It's got some great little prog tracks on it. It's just a solid album and I enjoy it listening to that. And I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 8.6. Okay, then coming in at number 4, we have the 6th album from 1980, Departure, and it was the last full-time studio album's appearance of founding member Greg Raleigh. He did appear on that soundtrack as well, but this is the last studio album that he had worked on. So we've got Steve Perry on lead vocals, Neil Schon on the guitars as ever, Greg Raleigh keyboards and co-vocals and harmonica, Ross Valoy on the bass guitar and Steve Smith on the drums. Opens up with a classic, Any Way You Want It. Another classic. As I said, everyone likes this. It gets overplayed, but I still like it. It's a great vocal from Steve Perry. Then we get my favourite track on here, Walks Like a Lady. I do love Greg's keyboards on this. Steve Smith's drumming on this is awesome. Great track. Someday Soon. I think this is the best song that Steve and Greg sang together. It's wonderful how their voices suited each other in the harmonies. Really, really good track. Then we get Places, People and Places, another good track. I love the interplay here between Steve and Neil on the drums and guitar. Very, very good. Precious Time. I like the changing sound of guitars on that. It's quite good. There's some delicate pieces. There's really good guitar work from Neil. Where Were You? Classic riffs from Neil. You got that classic drum and the pianos and the keyboards. Great solid track. I'm Crying, one of them great slow bluesy rock songs. Some great guitar work here from Neil. Love that one. Line of Fire. There's some very consistent tracks on here. This is a solid rocker. Then we get a little interlude called Departure. Quite like that one. And then we got another short track called Good Morning Girl. It's just Neil on the guitar, bit of strings. Stay a While. After all these good rockers, we get this real nice gentle track. I love this track. I would say it's one of my favourite tracks on the album. Steve Perry's voice is great on this. Homemade Love, it's a nice go back to a really good strong rocker to end the album. Great album, not a bad track on this one really. Got a mixture of good slow rockers and slow tracks. Fine performance by Steve Perry on this album. And I'll give this one an RTO ranking of 8.8. Coming in at number 3, we have the third album, released in 1977, and it's called Next. So on here we've got Greg Raleigh on keyboards and lead vocals, Neil Schon on the guitars, Ross Villeroy on bass, and Ainsley Dunbar. First track on here is Spaceman. I love the start of this, with the voice of X, the bass line from Ross, then Ainsley's drums come in. Very, very good track. Then we get People. Now I think this is the real first rock track from Journey. They're starting to go away from the jazz prog to the rock. Some great guitar work here from Neil. I love this. I Would Find You. The keyboards on this from Greg are fantastic. That incredible sound you get, and then you get some great riffs from Neil. One of my favourites on the album. Superb stuff. Here we are. Another track that's going more rock. Got some great guitar work from Neil. Then we get my favourite track, Hustler. I do like tracks that start off with a freaky guitar solo, and this is one of them. And then you get some incredible Hammond organ coming in on top of that. Great track, great drumming from Ainsley, fantastic stuff on this. Then we get the title track Next. Brilliant. Great rock track. Absolutely kills it. Ainsley's drumming, fantastic. Then we get a little instrumental called Nickel and Dime. Then you've had the last two tracks are real ferocious rock tracks, and then we get this sort of jazzy blues instrumental. Some of Ainsley's great drumming on that. Great track. Then we get Karma. Great little track to end the album. A great vocal from Greg. Some guitar work that's sublime. Okay, I think this is one of the heaviest albums that Journey ever did. I love this from top to bottom because you've got good rock tracks and then some jazzy blues tracks. And I think this is the best album of the first incarnation of Journey. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay then, coming at number 2, we go to the fifth album now from 1975, Evolution, and it was the first album to feature Steve Smith. So it's Steve Perry, Greg Raleigh, Neil Schon, Ross Villeroy and Steve Smith. This opens up with a short little instrumental called Majestic, and it goes nicely into Too Late, which I think is one of Steve Perry's great vocals, and it's got a great guitar solo on it as well. Then we get Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin', my favourite track on here. It's a great bluesy bass line from Ross, delicate guitar work, and of course Steve's vocal is amazing. City of Angels, it's a good track. I don't like the cheesy vocal though, but the solo is brilliant. It's one of them tracks that I love to hate. When You're Alone, It Ain't Easy. Great Neil Schon at the beginning. Fine vocal from Steve Perry again. Sweet and Simple. Great. It's a really strong track. Steve Perry's vocals are really good. Some nice delicate guitar work from Neil. Loving You Is Easy. Great rocker. Love Neil Schon's riffs on here. They drive the song along. Just the Same Way. one of Jonathan Cain's great piano starts. You know, once you hear that piano, you know you're onto a good thing. Then we get Do You Recall? I love that riff and piano at the start. And then you get some great drumming from Steve Smith. Fantastic. Daydream. What I like about this, it's just some great guitars, gentle keyboards, and a nice vocal. Very good track. Lady Luck. Some great drumming from Steve Smith on this. It's just one of them great little guitar pieces from Neil as well. Superb track. Again, a really good album from top to bottom. Really enjoy this album. It's got some great vocals from Steve Perry. And Smith's drumming is pretty solid and a good debut for him. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.2. Okay, my number one. Now, it's not very often I go with the flow, but on this one I had to, because I didn't want to, because I always think, oh, if I, you know, it's the obvious one, but there is a reason why this is number one, of course. This is the 7th album, released in 1981, and it is of course Escape. So we've got Steve Perry, Neil Schon, Jonathan Cain, Ross Beloy, and Steve Smith. Opens up with the classic Don't Stop Believe Me. I do like this track. I still love it today. It does get overplayed. It's one of them. There's two tracks that appear on rock compilations, some Journey, Anyway You Want It, or this one. But this is a great track. It's got some great guitar work from Neil on it, and it's not my favourite on the album, but I still think it's a great track. On the other hand, Stone in Love is one of my favourites. It's got a great riff, strong vocals, great bass line from Ross. Really took advantage of that 80s sound, didn't they? And really made the arena rock what it is. Then we get Who's Crying Now, one of my favourite ballads from Journey. It starts off with a great bass line, and Steve Perry is all over this. Fantastic. Then we do get my favourite track on this album, and it's Keep On Running. It's just a great rocker, an 80s rocker that has got some beef. The riffing in this from Neil is fantastic. What makes it though is Ross's bass line. Absolutely brilliant. Still They Ride. I think the balance on this is really good. The bass and the guitar really shine on this track. I love it. Escape, the title track. Lots of good riffs, lovely harmonies, and great vocal from Steve Perry. Lay It Down, another of those strong 80s rockers. Steve Perry's vocals, the driving riffs from Neil, some booming drumming from Steve Smith. Fantastic track. Dead or Alive. Love the drums at the beginning of this from Steve. Jonathan Cain's piano just comes in and takes over. Nice little rocker. Then we get Mother Father. I think this has got my favourite guitar solo by Neil Schon on this. It's an amazing guitar solo. Throw in a bit of piano from Jonathan Cain and a fantastic vocal from Steve Perry. You've just got a really good track. Open Arms, wonderful track. Highlight for me on this one is Jonathan Cain's piano. The gentle drums from Steve. Now it just shows he's not just a boom drummer, he can play delicate stuff. And it's a great way to end this album. Yeah, so for once I have gone with the flow. It is just a great album of the 80s. Because the albums of the 80s were all smooth, but I think this band really took advantage of this and used it to their advantage. I think it's got some of Steve Perry's finest guitar vocals, The keyboard work from Jonathan Cain on this is brilliant. I play this album a lot, and I always have. So that is why it's my favourite, because it is a damn good album. Simple as. Now and again we do get an album that everyone likes, and even Iain likes. So there we are. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.5. Okay then, that's all for today. I've already done 2 shows, which is not out of my comfort zone for a Wednesday. I'll be back tomorrow though, where we have got a Super Thursday. We've had so many super days this week. We've got a Super Thursday and a Super Friday. So tomorrow we have got normal programs. We've got a Battle of the Debut between two-piece bands from the 80s, Yazoo and Blancmange. Album artwork tomorrow is a prog album artwork looking at King Crimson's. And tomorrow, once again, I will be doing a collaboration with Mr. Richard McCook, and we have gone for something totally out of our comfort zone. We're going to pick our favourite 1990s number ones, and then to top it off tomorrow night we have a live stream. Busy day tomorrow, early start as well, so you may get the lights on when I record the shows tomorrow, the first 2. So have a great day everyone, and I will see you tomorrow with matchsticks at the ready to keep my eyes open. Bye for now.